The simple fact of the matter is that many people misunderstand the impact of mental health conditions. The reason why I say it is really based on two notions. One, I used to call it the silent disability because it's not a condition that you could tell just looking at someone. Somebody walks into the room and they've got a cane, they've got a cast on their leg, they've got a cast on their arm, they're bending over and so forth like that. They've got a collar and collar, always mess up, around their neck for their neck injury. Those are things where automatically you can draw an inference as to what's wrong with the person. If the person's walking in and they have a wheelchair, they're obese, again, those are things that you can kind of walk in and you can see right out the gate what's going on with the individual just initially. You may not be right, but initially you can draw an opinion. One of the tough things, like I said, about mental health condition is that I call it the silent disability because some people, I got news for you. You put 100 people in a room, you're probably not going to know who has bipolar, who's depressed, who has anxiety. You're just not going to know who has personality disorder, who has avoidant personality disorder. You may not. If you just have 100 people in the room, ask them to stand completely still, you're probably not going to know readily who has what. The other thing, a part of it, I said the first part is that it's silent because you can't tell readily, is with some mental health conditions, the condition itself tends to bleed over into causing other issues that are just an interplay of the problem itself. Now, I know that sounds like a whole lot of gobbledygook, but let me explain what I mean by this. For instance, one of the things that Social Security takes in consideration is that if you have a mental health condition, that the condition itself, let's say you have a psychotic disorder, that the psychotic disorder may prevent you from fully understanding or appreciating that you need to get treatment for that situation. For instance, if you hear voices, and it's documented that you hear voices, but you just take that as just, oh, that's nothing, that's just me talking to myself, and doctors have said you need to check into it, and you've discounted it, it might be the fact that you're hearing voices is a symptom of why you're not going to get treatment. The other thing that's tough is that sometimes people fail to realize is that with some mental health conditions, they go through periods of symptom-free intervals. And what ends up happening during those periods of symptom-free intervals, one starts to believe that you don't need treatment because when everything is cool, you don't need to take Paxil or Zoloft or Wellbutrin or Risperdal because you're not experiencing these symptoms at the time. So because you're not experiencing symptoms at the time, you use that as justification for why you shouldn't be getting treatment. And you also use that as justification for why you believe you are improved enough to go back into the workforce. And it is not uncommon for persons who experience periods of symptom-free intervals to go into the workforce, perform perfectly for a sustained period of time, like 3 months, 6 months, or even a year, and then something happens that sets them off and they decompensate. I've had a number of clients that I've represented that they've literally had those periods where they worked, they crashed. They worked, they crashed. And that, if you looked at it in its entirety, is really symptomatic of the problems that they experience from a mental health standpoint. So I tell people that mental health is the misunderstandings, the miseducation of the mentally ill. Is that sometimes people fail to realize that you cannot look at a person on their face and know instantly what their condition is. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And secondly, sometimes the mental health condition is indicative of the problem itself. It causes everything else. causes you to not appreciate you need to get medical treatment. It causes you to believe that you're not having symptoms, you don't need to get treatment. And it also causes you to have periods of decompensation once you push yourself too long, because you've allowed yourself to believe that you don't need any treatment during the time period. It's miseducation that some people have to not understand that at the core of what's driving these things is the mental health condition itself. And you got to understand that for purposes of how that may apply in a Social Security context.